Hi, this is Gayle with BERNINA of Naperville. And what do 6 food-related fat quarters have to do with anything? Well, it's our fat quarter of the month. And this month, we tried doing things a little bit differently. And one of the things that we did is we decided to give you a technique to do, and then you can just like pick the project that you think it would be suitable for. Because this month, we are doing quilting. We're going to do edge to edge in the hoop, and then we're going to do edge to edge in a hoop where you can scan something. And then, of course, I'll give you many tips and tricks if you just want to straight up quilt the items. If you don't have an embroidery machine, or you just want to use your walking foot, or maybe even try your Bernina stitch regulator, whether it is the removable stitch regulator or the integrated one. And then, well, we'll just take you on a journey through all kinds of bags that we've made using this technique. So, are you on board? Let's give it a try. Like I mentioned, we're going to be using our Bernina 990 for edge-to-edge quilting because I really think you're going to like how well you can scan, use that laser and virtual positioning and all of those things with this ultimate Bernina machine. But let's start with the fabric first. So this is a selection that we have picked at BERNINA of Naperville, and most of it is from the Snack Shack collection. There's the Cheeseburger in Paradise, the Lay Off Me, I'm Starving, Feed Me Tacos and Tell Me I'm Pretty, Mystic Pizza, and then we have these rainbows in the white background from Crystal Watson, and then a Crayola stripe. And this is Color Firefly. So this is what you're getting in your fat quarter selection this month. And then the project is, like I said, edge-to-edge quilting on the Bernina 990. And you can see here is our completed item, and on the back are the French fry fabrics. But it's pretty easy even if you don't have a Bernina 990. And I wanted to make sure that I supported those of you that do not have a machine like that. We have made other quilting in the hoop videos, and each one of these links that you see here on the interactive handout that you can find in the description of this video, and also under our Fat Quarter Club item on our Bernina of Naperville website, you will have this presentation deck, and I've included these links here to all of our different quilting pieces. I've also included some non-embroidery tutorials as well, using the walking foot, Catherine Redford showing you how she uses the Bernina dual feed or the walking foot, how to use the Bernina stitch regulator, and how to use the Bernina integrated stitch regulator, which is found on the Bernina 990. So the supplies, in addition to the Fat Quarter Club kit, there are many patterns that you call for pre-quilted pieces like the ByeAnnies. I've got that on the next slide. But you're probably, if you want to make one of the bags, you're going to need some other accoutrement to go with it. For instance, some contrasting solid fabric. Pellon Flex Foam is what we used instead of batting. We've got our Bernina sewing machine, and you'll want a regular sewing machine to sew your stuff together at the end. I'm using the 97D, a 26L, and a 4D for putting my bag together. And for the quilting part, I used Cerulean thread from Metler, and I put that in the top and bottom. And I did my construction with the wonderful Athena thread. I just love it. It's a 60 weight thread, but it stitches wonderfully. And then to quilt in the hoop with that large hoop, or even if you have a small hoop, I'm using Poly Mesh Cutaway Stabilizer. You're going to need a fabric marking pen, an iron, and I recommend the size 90 quilting needles. So some pattern suggestions. Now I've made up the sidekick bag, and when I did this one, I just did a walking foot grid. And then the same with my project bags. I did a walking foot grid, but I used the serpentine stitch to give it that wave. But I've also done that using ruler work. So if you are somebody that wants to do this technique that we're doing, but you don't want to do embroidery or anything in the hoop, then those are options for you. And then, of course, the ByeAnnies has these running with scissors. Then there's the Sallie Tomato, Tula Tote, and the Sallie Tomato shawl bag. Now, we didn't even do any quilting on these, and it's possible that you could fuse this stuff together because we did use that fusible foam that you wouldn't need to do any quilting at all if that's not your jam, right? But the mini Poppins bag here is also an option. So just to give you some options. Now, I did design a pattern that I'm going to show you how to use or give you some tips in this video. And I have the written instructions to make the bag right here. And you can see I made the taco tote and the burger bag. So the burger bag is just the same as the taco tote, except I've tucked my little corners in on the burger bag. All right, so let's get into actually how we did this edge-to-edge quilting. So there are some crucial ingredients when we are thinking about edge-to-edge quilting on our flex foam or our soft and stable or whatever. So this is the squishy, foamy type material that you see a lot in bags, particularly those ByeAnnie's bags and things like that. And I like the kind that's double-sided fusible, and that's what I'm using right now. And this is a fat quarter size. So if we take one of our fat quarters from our fat quarter pack, here's our hamburgers for our burger bag. And I'm just going to line it up like that. And before I press it down to adhere it, I want to center it in my poly mesh stabilizer. So these are 2 pieces of poly mesh stabilizer that are way larger than our giant hoop, our Bernina giant hoop, because I want to overlap these just a little bit like this. And then I want to be able to place my hamburger fat quarter and my fusible foam together like so. And I want to place it so that I have the most mass or most boundary area around this piece. And this will allow me to really get edge to edge on this fat quarter. So what I'm going to do now is take this over to the iron. So I'm using my Smart U Anniversary Edition Laura Star iron, and this is the kind that has steam when I press my finger on this button here. This iron also has a board that's going to suck the steam through the board or blow it up. But in this case, because we're working on something a little bit thicker, I want it to kind of suck through. So, and then I've got 3 layers here. The poly mesh on the bottom, and this is poly mesh that's 20 inches wide. So I'm going to just adhere this down, and just the steam going through the board and through our foam is sticking this piece to our poly mesh on the back as well. So I'm just going to carefully move this down to get the bottom bit, making sure everything is flattened out and very nice and behaving itself here. Let's turn it around this way. And just because we have this little overlap here, I'm going to use my glue stick. All right, so once I have my piece adhered, I can turn it over, and then I'm going to use a can of 505 adhesive spray and place my coordinating fabric, which is the fries, because who doesn't like burger and fries? So we're going to lay that into position. And now we're ready to quilt. So we're going to turn this over and think about how we want to place our giant hoop on this. I want to do row by row by row. And because I'm dealing with a fat quarter, to make life easier, I don't need to use the entire fat quarter. So I could literally do like fill this as much as possible and then come over and fill this area down here. But it works out better for me, honestly, is if I don't have as much of the soft and stable in my hoopings. So I'm kind of thinking of doing this in maybe 4 hoopings, where we do a hooping here like this, a hooping here like this, a hooping here, and a hooping here. And then that way I will have something that will go here, get connected here, and so forth, but it'll look like an edge-to-edge design. Plus, we get the experience of how to work our machine to our advantage and use the pinpoint placement, use the virtual positioning, use the laser, and of course, that glorious scanner on our Bernina 990. So we're going to take the bottom part of our hoop and make sure our ratchet is undone here. And we're going to place this, make sure that our fabric on the back doesn't flop around on us. You could do some basting stitching around there if you wanted. Otherwise, you could have a very sad situation. I know. And I'm going to, kind of come at it about like that. And place it in my hoop. Give it a good pushing. And then turn our ratchet. Don't overturn the ratchet. There we go. I like this. So let's turn our attention into the thread that we're going to use to do our quilting. Because I just want to add texture, I'm going for a lighter weight thread. This is a 60 weight thread. This is Cerulean. It's really lint-free, really slippery, but pretty awesome for quilting, especially if you pick something that goes over itself. And I've also wound a bobbin of it. So before we really get started, we've got our quilt sandwich hooped and ready to go on our machine, but we want to scan. First of all, if you want to tell it what hoop you're using, you just go ahead to the hoop and pick the giant hoop. Or what you could do is go ahead and hit this eye. Looks kind of like a drawing of a human eye right there. And this is also where you can zoom in and zoom out. If you want to go back to the default, you just simply click default. And right here at the top, at this hoop at the top, is our scan. And of course we have, we can pick a color, blah, 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 but we want to do a scanned image. Let's go ahead and hit the scan button. And it's going to ask us to attach the embroidery hoop if we haven't done so. And then if we have like our coded foot, or we've told the machine that it has a coded foot or whatever, we're gonna, at this point, make sure that we remove the presser foot and deselect it in the presser foot section. And then we're gonna hit the green check mark to ensure that there are no obstacles around the hoop. And then it's going to scan. And then once our scan is ready, we can either accept it or reject it. All right, once it's in there, we're gonna say okay. And now we're gonna place our design. So let's just have a look here at what we chose. All right, so how did I pick the design? Well, it starts with, I want to use a BQM file, because BQM files are those files that are made perfectly for quilting, because they don't necessarily read every bit of the stitch information. it's like reading information that moves that embroidery arm up and down, side to side, in all of those different directions, but then it pulls the stitch length from another source. And I'll talk about that in just a second. So the BQM files are found in the quilt folder, like you see here, or in the inspirations folder under quilt. And so there's a lot of different options for you. You can pick anything that floats your boat, really. But I'm going to pick the quilting folder. And with the new update, there is a new firmware update for the 990. And it's the firmware v44.01.05. You can download it yourself from the BERNINA.com website, or you can go to your dealer, or you can have it done maybe when you get your machine serviced or whatever, but I highly recommend that you do this update. So check with your local dealer or comment in the description of this video and I'll lead you in the right direction. All right, so nonetheless, when you have the new firmware, you're going to get an Amanda Murphy folder that has all of the Amanda Murphy designs that are BQM separated from the rest. And then there are some other designs that are just here. So I picked a design from just the regular quilting folder. And it's this one here, this 32196-28. And one of the things that I want you to pay attention to is if you go into your edit screen and we go down to the position section here, I want to make sure that show start stop is selected. And you can tell that that's selected because there's a yellow bar on the top of it. And then we can see over here, it's a green dot, and over here, it's a red cross. So it's going to start there and end here. Well, I want to work top to bottom. So I'm going to scroll up here and I'm going to rotate this 90 degrees. And then I also am moving this up into that portion of my screen. So now I want to duplicate this by hitting the duplicate button. And I think I can make one more. And now you can see green, start, red, end. Green, start, red, end, and so forth, going down this way like this. And now another really cool feature is we have select all, which is selecting the bottom layer here like this. And I can match start, stop. And look at that. How cool is that? And now I want to group this so that they stay glued together. And now I can cover a wider area here. So what I'm going to do is duplicate this unit and move it into position. And then we have to think a little bit about how this is going to stitch out. So if this is going green to red, green to red, green to red, then it's going to go me up here, green to red, green to red, green to red. Well, something that you can do only in the BQM files is that you can flip the start stop. So now we go green to red, green to red, green to red, like that. And now we're going to take this piece and we're going to duplicate it again. And now, unfortunately, this one, oh, there we go. We can get 3 in here. Depending on how you line it up, you may be able to get 1 or 3 designs. There's another feature on here if we select all. It's under Align. And then line everything up to the top and see how everything is perfectly spaced. And now we're ready to stitch. And we're quilting, so we're going to have our quilt settings on. And even though this is multicolor, I want this to stitch out single color. And now let's go for it. All right, but before we start embroidering, remember I was going to talk to you about setting the stitches per inch. Because this is a BQM file, we have to pull the stitch information from another spot. So let's go to our settings, which is under our 3 lines, or what I call the hamburger button. And then we're going to the settings icon. And stitches per inch is down here at the last choice. And the default setting is 10 stitches per inch. And I think that's a little long for what I'm looking for. So I'm going to set this to 13. Okay, then I can go back to my hamburger and select my embroidery. And then let's re-embroider. All the settings are correct. Okay, let's do it. And now the maiden voyage here, where we do our first stitching on one of these, is always the easiest, but it's going to be kind of like our measuring stick then from how we line everything else up. So let's just go ahead and get started with stitching this design. Okay, so now one of the things that I think is pretty cool that I learned from Connie Fanders is that I can undo my hoop and reposition right here without moving anything. And so I am going to do that. And I am going to move it over here to the side. Okay, so now we're going to scan again. Okay, now that we have another one selected, it's time to take this piece and line it up nicely with what's already been stitched. So let's zoom in and move over here. And see where we need to go with this. I think that looks pretty good. So now I'm ready to stitch. So I'm just lining up where the red is, which is my new stitching, versus where my other stitch lined up. And if I wanted, I could use virtual positioning, and that's where I touch like a spot of the design, and it'll take me to where that bit is on the design. Or if I want to see how close that's stitching, or somewhere over there, all I need to do is just touch the screen on the spot where I want to check it. And I'm really happy, so we're going to go ahead and say okay and stitch. I have all the same settings as last time. And I want to take a moment to talk to you about the second rehooping. You might have noticed that my hoop in the video had a red ring around it, like the one you see up here on the upper left, right here. Well, you can actually, on all Bernina machines, all models, you can have a design placed out of the hoop, and the machine will just simply not stitch the stitches that lie outside of the hoop. But you're going to get a warning. that looks like this. The embroidery design is partially outside the embroidery area of the attached hoop. Edit the embroidery design or continue embroidering. If you choose continue embroidering and touch that button right there, then you're going to stitchy, stitchy, stitchy. And then when the design approaches the design that lands outside of the area, it's going to tell you, hey, the next few stitches lay outside of the hoop. Well, if you go ahead and hit the green button, it's just going to go to the next available stitch that's in the hoop. So this is really helpful with our designs like this when we're doing all over quilting, because you know what? So what? If we didn't get this all in the hoop, this probably lays off of the area of your design anyway. This isn't going to work if this next side here, if this were, still part of the fabric that you're trying to embroider here, that's not going to work. But if this is, in our case, the very, very edge of our fat quarter, and it's going to go off the fat quarter anyway, this is a perfectly acceptable path to choose. All right, so I've gone ahead and re-hooped, and now the fun part is that I need to line up more than just the design side to side. I'm going to have to be more accurate with how I line up the starting points with the ending points. So you want to remember to scan now that we've got this in the hoop, and each time you have a new hooping, you're just going to scan so we can see those previous stitch designs on the fabric and all of that good stuff. But the best way that I can show you this is using the simulator, because you can really see like the stitching and the stitches and where they are here like this. So bear with me here. So what I've done up here is I've placed like my stitches that have already stitched out, right? So this is our bottom left corner that we now want to stitch or align at any rate. And so these are my little units here. You saw me make them. This is still the same design. And now what I want to do is line this spot up with that spot there. So what you're going to do is you're actually going to take your finger with virtual positioning and you're going to touch right there. And that's going to carry your needle of your machine to the spot where this design is. Then you're going to engage your multifunction knobs, and you're actually going to move that spot right there so that it's lining up right on top of that line. If you need help, you can zoom in I'm just going to move this onto that spot like so, and then I would do this with all of my pieces. So that they line up. That's all we're doing with the machine. Now, another thing that I mentioned to you earlier is that over here, we're outside of the hoop. Look at that there. You can see that we're outside. If you were timid about stitching this outside of the hoop, it's not going to hurt. The machine knows better, okay? You could also take this piece and maybe squeeze it so it's a little smaller, and then realign it up there at the top. So there's a lot of ways that we can do this to make it easier on ourselves. This might be a good option if we didn't have a fat quarter raw edge ending here and we had to do more stuff and you really were like, oh God, I just don't want to have to rehoop or whatever. So let's stitch this out. So let's have a look. So look at these stitches. There's a line up. There's a line up. Bear with me. And there's a line up. So look at that. That came out great. And you would never, ever, ever know that we just squished this guy just a little bit. So now we just have one more hooping over here on this side. So once we scan and we get everything squared away for our final hooping, we're going to go back to laying out our pieces that are the edge-to-edge designs that we've prepared. So let's look here on our final hooping. So I'm using my simulator, which means that these little gray areas here are representing those stitches that have already stitched out, right? So basically, because our columns here are still are grouped individually together, all you have to do is move these little guys and match the red with the green. And once again, if you need some help zooming close, don't forget that you can pinch pull with your fingers and use 2 fingers to move this around your hoop so you can see exactly what you're doing. And then you might notice that over here, yeah, it's wiggled out of our hoop area. And remember, this is the side that has the raw edge of our fat quarter. So it doesn't matter if we go ahead and stitch this and just let the stitching fall outside of the frame, because you don't really need those little higgledy-piggledy pieces. So let's go and enjoy this final stitching. And it's going to warn us that our embroidery design is partially outside of the embroidery area, but you're going to go ahead and say okay to that. And there's the warning, the embroidery design is partially outside of the embroidery area. No problem. Go ahead and click the green button. See how it jumped to the next piece here, and now just start the embroidery again. And it will continue. So you do that for each of those little portions. Now, don't forget in the instructions that you can download in the description of this video, and also in the product description on our BERNINA of Naperville website, we have a free pattern that we designed, and it's for this little to-go pouch. And all of the steps are spelled out for you, including the supplies and all of that. And it's pretty easy. I think you'll enjoy making it. And it's just giving you a free option if you don't have a specific pattern in mind. And it works exactly from 2 fat quarters, the foam, then some webbing, and some other stuff to construct something appropriate to carry around some tacos, a hamburger, or pizza. All right. Are you inspired? Are you going to give this a try? Are you going to just love making something to cart around your tacos, your condiments, your pizza napkins? Whatever it is that floats your boat, I hope that you give this a shot because this technique is certainly wonderful. Like I said, when you're using the byAnnie's patterns, some of the Sallie Tomato, or any of the other variety of patterns that are out there by wonderful, talented makers and pattern drafters. So thank you so much for watching. And don't forget, it's never too late to join our Fat Quarter of the Month Club because there's no commitment. If you like what you see, well, you can just sign up right now online, buy it, and then next month when you get your invoice, if it's not something that rocks your world, well, you don't need to purchase it. You can just leave that item out there for somebody else. And we have a lot of other tutorials as well on our BERNINA of Naperville YouTube channel. It's easy to find. It's youtube.com/BERNINA of Naperville, and there you can like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching and see you next time.